listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
And welcome to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Dave Ross alongside Geoff Schwartz here on this Monday. Geoff, every passing week, man, we're getting closer and closer. I can almost taste it. We're getting to college football, the NFL, of course. We have football right around the corner. A lot of news that we have to get to here to address on this Monday. And I wonder at this time of year, before we actually get to those camps in earnest at the end of the month, is this the last time that you can posture, if it's whether contract related or otherwise, to front offices before you have to really show up for those camps in earnest? Is this the last time to try to get every penny you can out of certain teams?
It is the last time. And to be honest, 1% of players have actual leverage here. This is it. Most guys don't. I mean, if TJ Watt is upset about a contract, he's probably got a little bit of leverage to not show up. But other guys don't. And look, they can make their feelings public, and we'll talk about one player that has done that. I mean, that's the leverage we have, is to make it a public mess, right? Is to make it a he said, she said, or just make it a team versus player, and to try to hope that you win over the public, or you win over some reporters who cover the team. But for the most part, there is not any leverage players have. You don't show up, you get fined. Dave, remember, in the previous CBAs, not the new one, if you didn't show up to training camp, they would forgive your fine most of the time, or they'll work that into the new contract. Now, fines are mandatory. They cannot be rescinded. So players that don't show up to training camp now get fined, and most of them, like Quinshon Judkins, who we're going to talk about in a second, can't afford to lose that much money knowing you might not make it up on the back end. 99% of the time, pre-CBA, you missed a week, you missed 2 weeks, you work a deal out, and the team just goes, okay, fine, no fine, or they include that money in a bonus or something like that. They can't do that anymore. So players have no incentive to hold out. Like, they're still getting their money. They can make the public know now before training camp starts, and then hope that the pressure of being public with your demands leads to some sort of changes.
Yeah, this is interesting because a lot of times this is how some players decide to do it, negotiate in the court of public opinion. That's maybe what Quinshon Judkins is doing here with the Niners, according to a report from Adam Schefter on Monday from ESPN. Quinshon is basically saying, you got to pay me, Geoff, or trade me. One of the two things before we even get to camp, which is, it's been a bizarre, this goes back almost 2 years ago to Deebo Samuel, who's obviously in DC now. Brandon Ayuk was upset. And now you're hearing it from Quinshon Judkins. What's going on with the wide receiver room in specifics? And what do you think Quinshon Judkins is really looking for here?
Well, I think a couple of things. There's one school of thought that says just pay your players early and don't worry about it, right? And Niners have said that for some guys, but some teams view wide receivers and skill guys as more like a commodity they could find elsewhere, right? And we know in the draft, you can find those guys, it feels like, fairly easily. Quinshon Judkins is a 7th round pick. I'm a 7th round pick, Dave. You always get viewed as a 7th round pick the rest of your career. It doesn't matter how good you are unless you're Hall of Famer, but you always get viewed through that lens. So Quinshon Judkins, I'm sure the Niners feel this way, is always a 7th round pick for them. They gave him a deal after last season. I believe he's making about 7.5 this year.
Yeah.
And he had a great year last season because everyone was hurt, right? In 2024. He started 10 games, 113 targets, 77 catches, nearly 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns. He was good in big moments. Third down, he was a great target for Brock Purdy. So in his mind, he goes, I'm elevated, right? I've elevated myself to a number 2 or maybe a 1B. I should get money that way. The Niners look at him and say, buddy, you've had one good season and you're a 7th round pick. Guess what? We can find someone else like you in the 7th round. We're not paying you any more money. So this to me feels like they worked behind the scenes on this. It didn't happen. We make it public. And he even said that he will show up for training camp. So whatever leverage he had is not there. This is a plea for someone to call the 49ers and say, hey, please trade for me. Here's what we'll give you for Quinshon Judkins. And this is where we're at. This is, look, his entire career, he'll be a 7th round pick in the eyes of teams. And the Niners, I think, strongly feel like we're paying you $7.5 million a year. If you're not happy with it, guess what? We'll find someone else in the 7th round next year.
2-year deals you mentioned, Geoff, last year, 15.4 was the contract with a guarantee of over $10 million there, $10.5 million in guaranteed money. So the base salary this year is very low, just over $1 million, but you already nailed it. Basically, on average for the 2 years is about $7.5 million there. So if you're the Niners, you're like, dude, we just gave you the deal, But
Correct.
Jennings is saying now I've already outplayed the deal from just a year ago. Do you feel like the team felt like they actually did take care of him before he gave you the production? Now he gives you the production because of all the injuries, and now the player's asking for more. How do you think that those negotiations actually play out?
I think nothing happens, and he just shows up for training camp, makes $7.5 million this season. I know it's not actually what he quote, makes this year; it's on average, obviously, but I think he just shows up and makes the money. And for him, he's on a contract year. You play well again, you get another 100 targets, and you catch 70 passes. Guess what? You'll make $25 million next season. Like that. That's what the sport is at times, right? You have to bet on yourself, and the Niners, I think, to your point, feel like we gave you a deal last year when you didn't have this type of production. Now we don't owe you anything this season.
Right.
So I get both sides of it, but I really think, look, draft slot bias matters a lot. It will always matter until you sort of bust through that ceiling, whether it's Pro Bowls, whether it's all pro nominations, whether it's obviously on track for a Hall of Fame jacket. It's really hard to overcome your draft slot, especially early. He's only been, this productive for one season. That draft slot bias remains for a long time.
In Kansas City, I want to get your take on this there as well with Trey Smith. We know he did sign the franchise tag, but Geoff, you were pointing out to me, he's the only guy in the NFL that's going to play on the tag and not get the new deal. How do you think that works out? Is he happy? What, $23.4 million is the tag number I'm seeing here that he's going to play on? Like, Geoff, is that a slap in the face to the player that he did not get a new deal done?
Well, there's still time. So as we're recording this on Monday, the deadline is 4 p.m. on Tuesday the 15th, as is every year on the 15th, for a franchise tagged player to negotiate a new contract. After that, he has to play on the tag. He's the only player as of right now that's still on the tag. Remember, he signed almost immediately. For him, obviously, a sixth-round pick, first-round talent. Remember, he dropped because of the blood clot issue. He signed that tag immediately. He's like, $23 million, sign me up. I'm in. I'm in for that. I would imagine if the Chiefs were serious enough to tag him, which I was surprised they did. I actually didn't think they would sign him. I thought they would just roll with Tooney and Creed and get a new right guard. They actually went the opposite direction, right? They got rid of Tooney. They franchised Trey Smith. They moved Kingsley Sumatia inside. It doesn't make financial sense and team building sense for him to play under the tag, right? Dave, like you obviously feel good enough about him for a long-term contract. Otherwise, you wouldn't even tag him. You would have let him walk. You now have Creed in the center. You got Trey, you got Simmons, like build around those guys. The Chiefs, though, historically under Andy Reid, have been very hesitant to pay guards. They have not done that. They have not paid centers. Creed was too good to not pay. You had to pay Creed Humphrey. So this would break a lot of what the Chiefs have done over the years. They have found that we'll let guards walk and we'll bring in replacements or we'll trade for Joe Tooney. So this would be something different they do, but when you draft a player like Trey Smith, who's the enforcer of your offensive line, all the success they've had, and then you franchise tag him, I would imagine a deal gets done by the time people listen to this. It certainly, will be done by Tuesday, I think, at 4 p.m.
Well, what's not getting done is a lot of these second-round deals that we're seeing across the league here in the NFL. We know Trey Harris, the talented receiver here, rookie receiver for the Chargers, did not show up to training camps on Saturday for the Chargers here. And 30 of the 32, as our conversation goes here on a Monday, 30 of the 32 second-round picks so far have not reached a contract agreement with their teams. And, Geoff, you and I have talked about it in weeks past about, kind of where it's slotted first round. Maybe that makes it easier. What's going on with the second-round picks and nobody getting to the table and signing their deals?
Well, so the rookie wage scale, we talked about this in many episodes, right? As basically it's a slotted contract, okay? So you get a certain percent more than the person the year before, and then as you get lower in the draft, it's very simple. It's like that's the formula. And for so long, since 2011, when this was enacted, first-round picks, for the most part, have fully guaranteed contracts. And this is the first year picks 33 and 34, second-round picks got fully guaranteed contracts. The teams at the top of the second round said, we're giving you fully guaranteed contracts. So now the rest of the second round goes, hey, I want fully guaranteed contracts too. Why am I not getting them? So the rest of the second round picks are not going to sign until pick 35 decides what they're going to do with their with the contract.
Their deal.
As soon as
Sure.
as soon as that one, I'm looking up who the player is. It is pick. So Schwartz was the linebacker for the Browns at pick 33, and Higgins was the wide receiver from Iowa State for the Texans. Those two guys got guaranteed contract. I also, by the way, I took Schwartz for defensive rookie of the year. By the way, I think it was like 40-1 the other day. This is I know maybe not the topic, but he's tackling a machine. He's going to get a ton of tackles. He's got a chance. The Browns have to be better, I think, than we think. So after that, it's these guys. I mean, look, they're going to hold out 35, 36 until someone decides what to do here. So someone breaks the tie. Someone either has to say, okay, we're something a non-guaranteed contract, or we're getting a guaranteed deal. And I would imagine that there'll be a stalemate well into the summer. No one's going to budge at all.
Okay, so very quickly here in the last minute we have in this segment, if you've been, you know what it's like to get to camp and be on camp on time, if not early, and those sort of things. Will this be water under the bridge for the majority of these second-round players, or is it going to impact their development?
Well, those are two separate things, right? Like water under the bridge, I think the teams just are like, great, you're in. You're in. Like the coaches don't care per se. They just want the player in training camp. They're indifferent. Like it's a business. They know it's a business. So water under the bridge, yes. Can they get ready in time? Different question. There are more guys that are ready to play right away. There are guys that take a little bit of time. Second round picks are expected to play right now. I think they would want every rep possible in training camp to get ready to play right now. So every day they miss is a one less day to get ready to play the regular season. It's hard to tell you which guys will struggle more than others. But I would imagine that the more reps I know the more reps you get, Dave, the better you will be as a rookie. So all these guys will struggle a little bit if they get less reps in training camp.
And that's going to be a fact of the matter if they're all going to be holding out here, as you alluded to, Geoff. So less reps is coming for these second round picks, that's for sure. All right, we're going to continue our breakdown of every division in the NFL. We're going to the AFC East. That is next here on the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
We are back on the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Dave Ross and Geoff Schwartz here with you on this Monday. We've been breaking down every single division in the NFL as we get closer and closer to the start of the regular season in September. And Geoff, when you go to the AFC East, if we had this conversation 365 days ago, it would be drastically different from the one we're going to have today. Because back then, it was like, oh, man, watch out for the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers, and they're the team, they're the pick this year, and the Bills, maybe they're going to slide. And then we just saw what happened. It was all Buffalo all the time. And now it feels like this year it is all Buffalo all the time. One of the bigger favorites you're going to see in any division. Now, we'll get to the Patriots here and certainly the Jets as well, and whether or not we think anybody else in this division, Miami included, can actually compete. But should they be the runaway freight train in this division in your eyes, that there is a clear separation? It's Buffalo and then everybody else.
Yes. I think quite simply, yes. If you're willing to tie up that money in the minus 275 division price, I wouldn't hate it. You got to tie up quite a bit there. But look, Buffalo is just a very good football team, right? If you look around the roster, they just are loaded with game records, with playmakers, with guys that can make a difference each and every week. And it's very important that they can win different ways, right? They can win offensively by passing the football, by running the football, by Josh Allen having to do a little, by Josh Allen having to do a lot. They can win defensively, right? Last year they had injuries and they survived the injuries to make it to the postseason. They also do something that I think is important. They kind of like kick the bad teams and win by 3 times. Like they kick their ass all the time. And that's what good teams do. One of my favorite things to do is like when Buffalo's at home playing a bad football team, they're favored by 14. They kind of cover that game. Like they just kick everyone's ass who they're supposed to kick. And that's a sign of a very good football team. The problem is they just can't beat Kansas City in the postseason. That's the only problem. Otherwise, like anything else, they can do just fine. So I'm very high in Buffalo. You look at the wide receiver room, it looks like it got even better. Shakir and Coleman in year 2. They added Palmer as well.
Yep.
The offensive line, I'm telling you right now, it's the second best offensive line in the NFL behind Philly. I don't think we pay attention to that offensive line quite enough. Fantastic offensive line. Good running back. Josh Allen's incredible, as we know. Any given week, the best quarterback in the NFL. I really think offensively they found a rhythm last season and what they want to be offensively, right? We're going to use Josh Allen's legs in big moments in big games. We're going to rely on running the football, on smart passing, right? We're not going to throw the ball into double, triple coverage. We're going to just make the plays that are there. And then defensively, they added Bosa. Their pass rush can be inconsistent at times, but Milano being healthy is such an important factor to this defense. They're decent, if not getting better in the back end, right? Like they have some young players that are, Benford is getting better and Bishop's getting better. Like they drafted Maxwell Harrison. Like they're so all long-winded to say a very good football team and a team that I will wager on, even at that price, to win the division.
By the way, they did give Josh Allen, the MVP now, the reigning defending MVP, a new 6-year deal, $330 million, $250 guaranteed. So look, that's not unexpected for the MVP for a player of his caliber. And you mentioned some of those other signings like the Joey Bosa. I know he's already nicked up a little bit here. And you add that Josh Palmer to the receiver room. Did they do enough though in the offseason? Like, is this all just predicated on, man, if they get the first down against Kansas City, we're not having this conversation about whether or not they're good enough to beat the Chiefs and potentially get to a Super Bowl? Because it did come down to a sneak that did not get home, at least in the eyes of the chain gang. But they're that close, Geoff, and yet they haven't been able to get over the hump. Did the offseason acquisitions, do you think they did enough to be the favorite to win the AFC this year?
Yes, I think they did. Look, the thing about the Chiefs and the Bills games in the postseason, and the Bills always win in the regular season, is they're not blowouts. They're 3
right
points. They're 3 points. They're 6 points over. So you got to think at some point, just luck turns around those games. I know it may be naive just to talk about luck, but that is a factor in it, right? And the Bills were right there multiple years in a row, haven't got it done. And their team, to me, is better this season with a couple additions they made. Josh Allen, off an MVP year. We could debate whether or not that was his or Lamar's to win, but the answer is Josh Allen won that award. Again, I like the draft pick of Harrison. I like the Milano's healthy, the pass rush, they paid Rousseau. So it's all in front of them, right? It's all there. They're going to be the 1 or 2 seed most likely. So maybe Kansas City has to go back to Buffalo like they did 2 years ago. And I like where Buffalo's at. Look, I've told this before, over 11.5 wins, laying 175, not my favorite bet. Look, if you're willing to weigh 175 on a win total over 11.5, just lay the 275 on division, right? Because that's the same bet basically. I know it's more expensive. I get that, but you can also win the division at 9-8. Like they're going to win the division. Like that to me feels like a wager worth making. I know it's a lot of money. You're tying up. I get all those things. But if you can get an adjusted 12.5, maybe that's the way to go for Buffalo. I don't always advise taking over 12.5. That's a lot of wins. But Dave, it's a well-coached football team. It's a physical football team, a good offensive line. Everything is there to have success this season.
Yeah, barring an injury to Josh Allen, I cannot see them not winning the division. I'm right there with you. And you mentioned the Chiefs games always coming down to a play, right? Or 13 seconds 3 years ago, somehow getting that field goal for the Chiefs to force overtime. You go back 2 years ago, it's a missed field goal by the Bills at home and the wind-aided kick, and they lose at the gun there. And then last year, it's literally an inch. Did they not get an inch on a 4th down sneak? I think if they get that, they win the game as well. So they've been razor-thin losses each and every year to the Chiefs. The Patriots now look like, at least in the betting market, Geoff, as the team that could, if any team's going to give them a push, it would be Mike Vrabel in year 1 in New England. What do you make of this football team? I worry that maybe we're a little bit over our skis on them and in kind of handicapping what they look like. They should be better, that's for sure. But are they good enough to actually be the second best team in this division?
Well, that's more of a question of the other 2 teams behind them. I think that's a fate of those 2 teams. It is I think we're a little high on New England, a little bit. Mike Vrabel is a fantastic coach. I'm all for that. But I still think that the team has a couple of holes on offense, right? The offensive line got better with Will Campbell. They brought in Badbury, who's fine. They brought in Moses as a veteran right tackle presence. Wide receiver, they brought in Diggs, but again, multiple teams now, like that worries me that teams keep saying like you can leave. I don't. That's not great, right? And they have. I like Jalen Polk from last year. He doesn't catch the football, unfortunately. They drafted Kyle Williams. They brought in Mac Hollins, who doesn't do much. Running backs I like Trayvon Henderson, and that's a good draft pick. I think we all agree Drake May, really good. Tight ends just is okay in my opinion. Defensively, tons of talent. They went and got some guys in free agency to build that group, kind of in the light of Vrabel. Like all those, I think it's a better team than last season. Mike Vrabel's a better coach, but the offseason like champion who we think is much better often doesn't live up to those expectations in year one. And that's just my only concern with New England is that, we're putting all this hype on them. Can they actually do it when it matters most first year with a new coach?
I'm with you, Geoff. I think we're a little bit ahead on this football team here. Everybody wants them to be better. They will be better. But one signing I did want to ask you about in specifics is, find you a guy that loves you like Pete Carroll loves Geno Smith and vice versa. This could be the case with Harold Landry too. They gave him a pretty good deal, 3 years, $43.5 million. $26 million of that is guaranteed, max value of $48 million next year. That's a lot of money to play, but clearly Vrabel likes him, obviously from their days together in Tennessee. What does he bring to a Vrabel defense? And why do you think Mike stood on the table and said, I got to have this guy if we're going to be successful year one?
Well, it's important when you go somewhere to have people that can help instill your culture, right? And I think Landry is one of those guys that he trusts to just let everyone know, especially on defense, this is what is expected of you in this scheme, right? And then also on top of that, in the leadership of having played a lot in the NFL and playing under Vrabel. So those are important. Now, of course, he's been a consistent, 12, 10.5, 9 sack guy, 9 a couple, his second season. Like he's been around there. I would imagine that doesn't change, right? Sort of about 10 sacks, which is good, great, and not something that's all all NFL type. But you're paying for leadership, you're paying for knowledge, you're paying for I know what it takes to win on a team coached by Mike Vrabel, and so that's I think all the reasons why we saw him get that contract.
It is funny because you look and it kind of feels like they went free agency defense, right? And Vrabel's going to bring in his guys like Harold Landry, and then offense in the NFL draft. Their first 4 picks were all offense, and 2 of those guys up front. Of course, the big one was Will Campbell, 4th overall from LSU. They also drafted center in round 3 and sandwiched in between Trayvon Henderson out of Ohio State, a running back there, and a receiver in the 3rd round. So they got some help for Drake May. How big a leap can we expect to see May take with these new weapons and protection up front?
I find the talk about second-year quarterbacks so interesting, right? Where people are like, Jane Daniels will have a sophomore slump just because that's like what happens every now and then. And that Drake May is going to have this like big boom up in year 2. Both can be true. They could both play well in year 2. I mean, Drake May showed the ability with a roster that wasn't great last year to make special plays, right? You want your quarterback to elevate the team around him, right? And we saw last season Drake May elevated New England around him. Now you add in a better offensive line, a better play caller, a better just situation in general. Plus you add in Diggs, you add in Kyle Williams. Like you have players there that can help him continue to elevate himself. I think he will play well. To what extent, I don't know. If he is above average, the team will go in the right direction. And I think we're going to see that happen. I think we saw enough last season where he's an elevator of guys around him. That bodes well for year 2 now with better parts around him.
Agreed. And I do really like when you go get help up front on that offensive line to help out your young quarterback there as well.
Yes.
All right, when we come back, let's keep going in the NFC East here, Geoff. And let's talk about the other 2 teams. Could we get surprises in Miami and or with the Jets? That's next here on the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
We continue the GM Shuffle here on this Monday. Dave Ross and Geoff Schwartz here with you as we break down the AFC East. And I think it was pretty clear, obviously, that Buffalo is the top dog now in the division. And it feels like the Patriots are going to be that second choice here, at least on paper. Now, when you get to 3 and 4, the bottom half of this division, these were two teams a year ago that had really high expectations in the Dolphins and the Jets. Let's start off with the Fish down in Miami. And it really came off the rails. It felt like in many different ways a year ago. And now, Geoff, when I look at the Dolphins this year, an 8-win team last year, the expectations have been lowered in the betting market. They're down to 7.5 for their win total off of an 8-win campaign a year ago. And I almost feel like Mike McDaniels as a head coach, and, you know, he's kind of a different guy. He felt like he was the chic guy a couple of years ago with this offense and nobody could stop. And then they stopped it. And now I go, what's the next trick? Like, do you have another trick? Or was it a one-trick pony a couple of years ago? And now people are figured out Tua Tagovailoa, your weapons on the edge and Waddle and Hill. And if you don't run the ball effectively, what does this offense really look like? Like, Geoff, what do you see? Is it closer to what we thought we were getting 2 years ago, or more of what we saw last year was a big disappointment?
Oh, it's going to be a bad season. There's no doubt about it. You know, it's that simple, right? So let's sort of talk this through, right? I mean, look, Tua at his best is a game manager, which is not a bad thing. I mean, use it in a bad way right now. Game manager to me is not all bad because you're just running the offense as designed. When I talked about Drake May earlier, elevating everyone around him, right? With his play, I don't think Tua elevates everyone around him, right? Everyone has to elevate around Tua to make it work out really well. And when you take away his first read, the second and third, like, he just is not great. I mean, the ball is out in 2.5 seconds or nothing. Or the offense is dead, right? It's dead. You lose your left tackle. Now, Patrick Paul, I think, has a lot of potential there. They went and got James Daniels. They drafted the kid out of Arizona. But the offensive line is, I think, at best, like, I don't know. I think if they average at best, great year. They have no tight ends, right? I like their running backs. They're okay. They're, A-Chain had a good year last year. We know Hill and Waddle, but, Tyreek Hill's a year older now. And everyone has figured out this offense, right? As the season goes on, the offense is worse. If Tua gets hurt again, this team is done. They're just done for the season, right? Like, there's just a lot of concerns I have for what they're doing for what they're doing offensively is in a way that can progress this team throughout the season. We know the second it gets cold, that's the end of it. There's done, like, cold weather games, not winning those games. And that all concerns me. So offensively, I just don't feel great about where this team is at right now. And I gotta see the second and third pitch, man. Like, we know the fastball. We know the Dolphins fastball. What's your off-speed pitch? What's your, what are you doing when a batter hits that fastball? What's your next pitch? And Miami hasn't shown the ability to do that. I was looking at their win total. I haven't made this wager yet. I missed the 8.5, unfortunately. It's minus 200 for 8.5. I don't like that. But they're a team that I will wait to see pop back up to 8.5, hopefully. But it's a very strong underplay for me. I do not believe in this team at all.
Well, you mentioned a couple of the key parts there, which is once the second half of the season comes and they go on the road and they have to leave South Beach, they turn into a pumpkin, as we've talked about. It's not just, Mike McDaniel that's not been able to figure this out. This has been a problem since Don Shula, if we're being honest. I don't know how you change that, but that's the job of the head coach to be able to change that. And, Raheem Mostert's gone. He's not on this roster anymore. You still have Hill. Looks like Tyreek sometimes is quarreling about maybe wanting to leave South Beach here. I don't know if they do something before a trade deadline, but I don't see any direction. And that's got to come from the top. Like, hate to put it all on the coach. That's kind of the gig, isn't it? Like, if you can't get this team mentally prepared to play in different elements that you're going to get once the calendar gets out of October, and you can't win on the road, it's really hard to be successful if you know this team is just not going to play well once we get into colder temperatures anywhere in the country.
Correct. So their schedule right now. So this is the problem, right? So They have a 3-game stretch at home late October: Baltimore, Buffalo, Washington. Then a bye. New Orleans at home. So they have four. Basically, they're at home for 5 weeks in a row. Now, one of those games, it's one of those games in Europe. Yeah, the Washington game is that makes sense. Okay, I was like, that's 5 weeks in a row at home. That's it's a lot. So yeah, the game against Washington, I think, is a game overseas. Then it's at New York, at Pittsburgh. So 2 cold weather games in December, and then at New England in week 18. So I don't know. Those don't feel great. If you're a Dolphin fan, if it's cold in MetLife, it's cold in Pittsburgh. It will certainly be cold in New England in January. So, that those you're trying to win a division or make a wild card. You got to go. You got Cincinnati there at home as well. The schedule's hard. So they end with 3 cold weather games. Okay.
Yep.
And then they end with hosting Cincinnati and Tampa Bay. Here's how I think how you play this schedule, right? This is the important thing about having legal sports wagering. It's changed the way you can wager on these things.
Yeah.
There's a thought, I think, with their schedule. They could start out, quote unquote, hotter than we think, right? Like it's Indianapolis, New England, Buffalo, Jets, Panthers. You got the Browns in there, the Falcons in there. They can maybe start 500, and then you take the win total under because they end with Baltimore, Buffalo, Washington, Saints, Jets, Steelers, Bengals, Bucks, and Patriots. Like, so I just don't have faith this team with the schedule, the roster around them, the lack of adjustments over the years is going to sort of just pop back up into playoff contention.
They better get off to on the good foot there, because you're right. At the end of that schedule in cold weather, it could be the same old fish all over again. And I just wonder how long the head coach will be around if they don't change their ways this year. They switched the head coach in New York, New Jersey for the JTS Jets. Aaron Glenn used to play corner way back in the day. I'm showing my age. I used to watch him play as a player. Fun player to watch. Now he's pretty fired up. If you heard his introductory press conference, I can't repeat the words he used, but let's just say he's fired up, leaving Dan Campbell in that line staff to take over his former team. What do you make of Aaron Glenn? Because fiery, I think, is a good way to describe him. And maybe that's what they needed. I'm not saying that Robert Saleh wasn't, and if whether or not Saleh should have been relieved of his duties the way he was a year ago. But the change has been made, and you're going back to defense here. Aaron Rodgers is gone. Devontae Adams is gone. It's a whole new look Jets. What do you think this thing will actually look like?
So the best thing about right now, right, is that it's quiet. Like there's nothing out of New York. It's dead quiet. Like they have made, am I wrong? Zero. When did you do a show every day? I know it's focused on baseball and WNBA and other things at the moment, but there's football talk in there.
Yeah.
Have you mentioned one Jet story? Has anything dead quiet, which is so different than the way the Jets have operated over the years. I love this about the Jets. Now, does that mean I'm all in on them? No, because the quarterback is not very good. But I'm in on quiet. I'm in on keeping it in-house. I'm in on, I think, the physicality we're going to see from Aaron Glenn team. I'm in on Membu, who they drafted. I like Mason Taylor at tight end. You know, the quarterback's just not, Fields is not good. So like that, it's just is what it is. People always want these guys to be great. He's not good. That's fine. That's life in the big leagues. Just not everyone's going to be good. And so that'll probably hold the team down. We'll probably see at some point, have a couple games that he uses his legs and makes a couple plays here and there, but he's on a third team for a reason in 5 years, and that might hold him back a little bit. But this year to me, for the Jets, is about building a foundation around Aaron Glenn, showing toughness, physicality, determination, like all the things that Aaron Glenn wants from a team. And then next season, it's let's draft a quarterback in the first round. I think that if they had this, Aaron Glenn's never going to say this, but 5-12 this season, you play hard in every game, you're in it, and you draft 7th overall and you draft a quarterback. That to me is like the perfect Jets scenario. Jets fans probably like, oh, screw you, Schwartz. I want to win 11 games. But like, think about this, right? Like you build your foundation this season. You're still young enough on defense where next season you'll still have a lot of those dudes, right? They're still there.
Yeah.
You have a rookie quarterback on a rookie contract after this season. You have young offensive linemen. You probably want to go get yourself some more wide receiver help after the season in the draft as well. Like, to me, this is all a foundational year for Glenn. Let's build the foundation of what I want it to be. Let's play, let's play good football, not turn the ball over, don't kill ourselves. Winnings and losses don't matter as much. And then next season, get a rookie quarterback, and we're full steam ahead.
It's I don't know if it's going to be a same parallel, but you can go back to, I remember very well when Rex Ryan was the defensive coordinator in Baltimore and they had great success there. And then Rex took over the Jets. He brought Bart Scott with him. You remember that back in the days to New York, and kind of that guy that you're talking about, like maybe what we're seeing with Mike Vrabel in New England. And, that was the identity, was the coach into the player and that defense. Is that what Aaron Glenn's got to do year one? Establish that we're going to go back to the Rex days where it's defense first. And then we'll bring that offense along, as you mentioned, maybe the draft next year with a quarterback. But we're gonna hang our hat on defense every single game for 17 weeks and see where that takes us.
Yes, because the defense is better than the offense, I think. But also, too, what I feel very strongly about this, when you're a head coach and you come from an offensive background, defensive background, the one thing your team has to be good at is the thing that you master in. So if you're an offensive coach, you better be good on offense. If you're a defensive coach, you better be good on defense. If you're John Harbaugh, you can be good at everything. Or just Justin Tucker makes kicks for 10 straight years till he doesn't, right? Like, you can. So the Jets better be good on defense. Aaron Glenn's a defensive guy. So that to me is a must. It's a must they're good on defense because also the quarterback situation. But Aaron Glenn, let's get the defense right in year one. Then year two, let's move on to getting the offense right.
I love it. And we kid about John Harbaugh, but his special teams were always really good in Baltimore. When he got that job, remember, he was the special teams coach before that with the Philadelphia Eagles. So, yeah, you're right. What do you do? Why did you get this job? We need to see that right away. And I'm sure that's what Aaron Glenn will be trying to do in year number one with the JTS Jets. When we come back, I do want to get some other news around the NFL that we didn't get to at the beginning of the segment. And again, I think we all look at it, the hierarchy of the AFC East to round out this division. It does look like the Bills, the Patriots, the Dolphins, and then the Jets. We'll wrap it all up next right here on the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
We are back on the GM Shuffle. Dave Ross and Geoff Schwartz here with you on a Monday. And again, as we get closer and closer to camps, a lot of it is you get excited for the upcoming season, see what these draft picks look like. As we talked about earlier in the show, a lot of the second-round picks have not yet signed, so they're not showing up here. One guy who's not going to show up right now is Quinshon Judkins, the running back, second-round pick of the Cleveland Browns, and not for a good reason here, Geoff. He was arrested this past weekend, charged with domestic violence, according to a report there in Broward, Florida, in their sheriff's office. He did post bond pending trial for this situation here. Look, we've talked about a lot of these things here. He is unsigned currently. He was a 2025 second-round pick of the Browns. How does this alter what the Browns might do with what they thought was going to be a guy that they were counting on as a second-round pick and saying, oh, boy, now I don't know if we even want to sign our second-round pick?
Well, we talked earlier about the guaranteed contracts. I know one person is not getting one. That's Judkins. He said they're not giving him guaranteed contract after this. Look, we don't know many details yet. He was arrested Saturday, charged with touch or strike battery, domestic violence. He is pending trial on his misdemeanor charge. He posted bond, so he's out. Look, the NFL goes through the process of figuring out suspensions and what to do, right? They have leaned more recently on waiting for the court process to play out before deciding punishment. That's not always the case, right? They've sometimes punished players before some sort of civil trial is up, or the criminal proceedings are done, or they've done their own investigation. And if they've said we shouldn't suspend that person, to do it anyways. They've been very uneven with suspensions, but they've tried to make it more uniform lately. So as far as that, I don't know when he'll play, if he will play, but they did draft Dylan Sampson as well. The Browns did. They have Jerome Ford, so they're pretty much okay there. But, you have to question, and perhaps by saying, anytime a man puts a hand on women, it's wrong. Sure. We know that, right? Of course. But they have to question again, like, what are we doing with this second round pick we just drafted? And you hit a woman. Like, we can't trust your judgment. We can't trust you anymore. And from that perspective, I think they're going to sign him, of course, but are there things in his contract now that are put in place to make sure if this happens again, they recoup some of the money, they can get rid of your bonus, structure based on arrest or suspension. So, it seems so simple, right, Dave? Like, just don't put your hands on women. Like, it seems like such a simple thing that we have to keep talking about when it comes to NFL players. And look, society as a whole, of course.
Right.
But just don't put your hands on women. And the NFL, look, they'll let this play out. We don't know where this ends up. As far as the Browns this year, I think this is inconsequential to their success with, they have Sampson as well. They have Ford. And look, right now, Judkins, he'll play. Dave, one thing that's interesting about some of these situations to me is that the NFL does the suspensions. I've always wondered why teams just don't do it themselves. And I get why I get why they don't, obviously, right? Because that'd be uneven, right? Like, one team would say, like, oh, we're fine with this. No suspension. Our team would suspend someone for 6 games. But it does feel like at times the teams should do this themselves. And again, I get why they don't. It's the NFL's job, not the team's job. But they're going to let Judkins play through this process. If it was me and you, we wouldn't be on the show during this process. That's the way the NFL works.
It'd be a little bit different again on the heels of the Deshaun Watson fiasco there in Cleveland. Not a good start, obviously, for your second round pick to begin this upcoming season. Another guy who's not going to be at camp is going to be Tristan Wirfs. Very different reason why he's not going to be down there with the Buccaneers. They're very talented tackle. He is going to all pro, by the way, left tackle. Underwent knee surgery last week. Likely going to start off the season on the PUP list. That's the physically unable to perform list. And so when you see this, these are the type of things, and as a lineman, Geoff, like, when I see this, I go, man, I like everything about this Bucs team. And then you tell me you might be without Wirfs for quite some time. Woof. That's the stuff. If I'm Baker Mayfield, I go, oh, man, now I got to worry about how we're going to at least begin the season without Tristan Wirfs, our all-pro tackle. That is a big deal that sometimes I think people don't fully realize those line responsibilities, Geoff, and how much they change when you lose a guy like Tristan Wirfs.
Yeah, the issue, I think, for me is, look, you enter a season at 100%. You're supposed to, right? Of course, might not always work that way if you're rehabbing injury. And then every day you lose a little bit more, right? It goes from 100% to your body's 99% all the way down. Now, you can recharge it back up to 95. You can get it, back up there at some point. You never get back to 100. So now we're starting a season not even 100%, right? Nope. Whatever he gets back to, it's not 100% after his rehab. And then you continue to just get your body beat up. And so I just always worry about guys entering seasons off PUP. Now, he's an exceptionally talented football player, right? It might not matter in the end. Some of these guys, I mentioned this before, I played, luckily enough, with all pros and with Hall of Fame guys. They are just built differently, okay? And he's on that trajectory of being that type of player. So I could say all these things about, hey, man, he's not going to start the season healthy and he's a freak show and he ends up being okay. But it is concerning, right? Tampa's offensive line is really, really good. And they're up and coming. They're young. And to lose the stalwart like this is not great. Charlie Heck will fill in. His dad, offensive line coach for the Chiefs, by the way, Andy Heck. So blood offensive lineman, in blood in him. They're just trying to get by for 4 weeks. I will say this, though. With one guy being hurt on offensive line, you can figure it out. It'll help Charlie Heck. It'll make it work, especially with the rest of the offensive line being good. That's fine for now. Another injury, then we have question marks about how they start the season.
You're right. Once you get that to the second one, I know that the Lions with Frank Ragnow, with his sudden retirement, they're going to have to fill that position at center. Go back a couple years ago with the Cowboys where they kept losing linemen, had to play a lot of the kids. Sometimes it can be a benefit if you can get Heck some reps and then you get Wirfs back. It's like you've grown him into that spot. That could be a positive at the end of the year. But I think your bigger point is really well taken, that you hope Wirfs is going to be back to being as close as he can, but he won't be 100% coming off this knee surgery and then coming off the PUP list. He's not going to be as he was going to be before the injury. That's going to be the hard part here for Wirfs. And you hope for his own sake and the offensive line's sake, he can be at least, you would hope, maybe 80% before you get to the season. What do you make of this news out of Chicago? That Ryan Poles, the GM, has agreed to a contract extension that's going to keep him there, at least under contract, through 2029. Geoff, like, I saw this deal and I went, okay, great. Why now? Like, what was there an impetus to make this deal to extend Ryan Poles through 2029?
No, man. Guess as good as mine. I guess just to maybe pair him up with Ben Johnson, which I don't know what Ben Johnson's contract is. I would imagine and say, look, man, you've added the pieces to make Caleb Williams better. You've drafted, you've traded, you've got guys in free agency. We've signed Ben Johnson. Let's marry you guys together for as many years as possible. Right now, that could be the impetus, is that we want to marry you guys. We don't know how long Ben Johnson's deal is. I'm sure you figure it out, but it does feel like they just want to partner these guys together. Now, someone argued that I think it's 16 wins under Ryan Poles. Not great. Why would you extend a GM who hasn't won it all? But I think they're all in on what they're building right now in Chicago. And sometimes that's the right decision, right? Let's not make a rash decision. Let's not go ahead and get rid of guys before we need to. But it does feel like they're trying to marry up Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles, maybe forgetting what happened previously, knowing what, I think we all agree the job the Bears have done to rebuild their roster has been very good. Now you have the coach. Now let's see if we can win.
Well, that's the thing, right? Because the Eberflus, that signing didn't go well. It didn't end well there. We saw what happened on Thanksgiving a year ago, and you're like, oh my goodness, for your Ryan Poles, like how do you move on from this? It looks like they didn't move on from that Eberflus situation in the best way possible. I don't think anybody's debating that Ben Johnson was not the right hire. Now, whether it plays out to be the home run hire that we're all projecting it to be is still another situation. But really, Geoff, so he marries himself with Ben Johnson. That's great. But is he any more married to Caleb Williams? Can we make that argument that if Caleb doesn't work out with Ben Johnson, and that was your number one pick as the GM, Ryan Poles, that ultimately that might be where we start to evaluate the judging and the scouting that he was able to do to make that first overall selection?
Well, then they're gave him extension for no reason. But then he's gone. He'd be gone immediately, right? If not, this feels like, again, that they trust Caleb Williams is going to be really good, right? Obviously, and that no matter what happens with him, Ryan Poles is staying. So it feels like they're going to let him draft someone else, which will be pretty funny. I just think that would be the wrong decision if they gave him one more opportunity to have another first-round quarterback. But it does feel like very much they're marrying these guys together. And we're saying Caleb Williams is the guy. If he's not, whatever, like you're still in on it, because that's what this signals to me.
And again, the Bears traditionally, I know from my time there in Chicago, not looked at as a team that's really willing to eat contracts, fire people, and then hire new people while they still have these existing contracts. So your point's well taken. Like, man, you give him this extension through 2029. Traditionally, that says he's got at least a couple of years that he should feel pretty safe because they don't want to pay multiple people if you got rid of one. But if it went south this year, Geoff, I'd be like, that's going to be, if it doesn't work out, not saying it has to work, to win the division in year one or something like that, but you've got to see the signs that Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams are right, or else we're really going to start looking back upstairs to Ryan Poles.
No, that's absolutely fair. But the thing I think of is that they just have determined that Caleb Williams isn't the guy, but and he's there for whatever happens next. But then you've completely failed on this entire experiment. So I don't think they've come to that conclusion yet. It does seem like no matter what happens, Poles is surviving this. That's what it feels like to me. Yeah,
I tend to agree that it feels like at least maybe for the next 2 years, even though the contract will go through 2029, Ryan Poles is going to be the guy. Look, it could work out. It should work out. It looks good on paper again with Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams in year number 2, and Ryan Poles now going deep into his tenure as a GM with the Chicago Bears. All right, Geoff, a lot of fun as always on this Monday. Next week, we'll do it again. We got a couple more divisions we still have to break down before we get to the regular season. So we'll do that next week. But again, we're getting so close, my friends. So Everybody, we want those guys to report. Hopefully we'll get everybody signed and we'll be ready for a great year to begin the 2025 campaign. So for Geoff Schwartz, I'm Dave Ross. Thanks for watching the GM Shuffle presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours.